For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another Live and Amplified Livecast. I'm your host, Tom White, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Kehan Miller. How's it going today, Kehan?
Going well. How about you?
Doing pretty good. You know, it's been a rough week, as you and I have discussed several times over the last week, because we originally had you scheduled about, Wednesday, something like that?
Yeah.
And then Saturday, yeah. It just didn't get any better after that, but finally got you on. So I'm excited to sit down and chat with you. So before we kind of jump into everything, I want to thank you for sticking by and joining me. And I'm really, like I mentioned, really excited. So first off, can you kind of, for the people that aren't really familiar with who you are, the people that listen to my podcast, can you give us a little brief introduction on who you are, kind of like a comic book origin story, if you will?
The comic book. I need to get some little illustrations behind me then. I've been really blessed in my career. I started with music, then I also went into dance and performing. And so my whole life, I've been really lucky to be able to support and do what I love. And I went from doing music to doing some TV shows when I was a kid, little local TV shows in the Louisville area, and then started doing theater and started touring and toured internationally with a couple of music groups. I was a singer with an orchestra, and then went to New York after graduating uni, went from there doing some stage stuff, and then to LA doing some TV and film, and started writing more music. And it's just kind of taken me around the world. And that's my little story in a nutshell, that I started with music and I'm still doing it, which is what I love, but still also doing film and TV projects as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what we were talking before we jumped on here, you're from Southern Indiana,
Yep.
which I feel like that entire region, Indiana, Illinois, it's either Chicago or Indianapolis, and then it's like everything else are like the big references I get. So like my sister, she lives in, oh boy, what's the name of the city? Roselawn, Indiana. And everybody asks her where she lives, and it's like, she just says Indianapolis, because that's like the most, because if you tell anybody that's not from the area where Roselawn is, they're not going to know. Same with me. I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago. It's like, I'm from Chicago. No, I'm not really, but you know, is what it is.
I grew up on a farm outside. So I always say I'm from Louisville because they call it Kentuckiana there, because I'm across the river from Louisville, which there we say Louisville. But I grew up on a 100-acre farm, basically with milking, 88 acres between my cousins who lived next door and my grandmother on the other side. And I milked cows by hand, and it was considered a hobby farm. So I was a farm boy. But I always say I'm a Louisville boy.
Yeah. So did you go to, what is it, Thunder over Louisville? Is that the big fireworks?
Yep, that's the big fireworks show. I've been there a few times. Yeah.
Nice.
So.
I don't know why that automatically popped into my head. I've never been there, and I've only heard about it a couple of times, but for whatever reason, that was the first thing that popped into my head. I
was surprised you knew it.
Yeah. Because I lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky for about a year. Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot of people that were from Louisville that lived in, or that worked where I was at, and they would talk about this thing, Thunder over Louisville, and then I never heard of it before I went there. Never heard of it since I've been there. So, you know, it's one of those things. It was like stuck to my head, and I was like, oh, I bet you he's been there. So,
yep. It's a big, anytime you're anywhere where it's a local favorite, and it's a huge celebration. It lasts for several days. So they have the big fireworks, but even before that, they have music festivals, they have food festivals, everything just leads up to it. So it's a great it's a great communication, or sorry, a great community building
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
So yeah.
So, who introduced you to music?
My mom.
Okay.
My dad loved to sing. He never did anything professionally, but he loved to sing at the top of his lungs. Like he would be singing in the shower, he'd be singing as loud as he could at church. He loved music. But my mom, when she was young, she danced with the Louisville Ballet, but she also did theater and plays and sang and danced. And I think it probably started with her mother, my grandmother, who was very influential to me. She started sewing when she was like 9, and she started sewing more and more professionally. And she actually was a seamstress with the
Oh wow.
Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, to
Yeah.
where she graduated up to making costumes for the lead
Oh
acts.
wow.
And so she had become the seamstress. So I think that's where the showbiz bug, in a way, hit her. And so with my mom and my aunt, we always were singing. There's 8 kids in my family. I had 7 siblings. And then my cousins, my mother's sister, has 7 kids in her family. So they had us singing harmonies even when we were little. So they called us kind of like the family Von Trapp. They called us, our family, the family Von Millers.
Okay.
So I can't even remember a day that we weren't singing.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice. So you grew up near Louisville, and then you or started moving around the country as you grew up and started getting into music and performing and all that stuff. And now you're out of New Zealand. You're in Christchurch, right?
Yes. Now, I just moved back to Christchurch. I was in the North Island for a little while.
Okay.
But yeah.
How did you end up in New Zealand?
Um, Probably the shortest version of the story is I've been really fortunate. I've been working around the world. So I was doing projects, even though I was based out of LA for a long
Mhm.
time. I was doing projects, whether it be music or film or show projects, that I'd be on the production team or the creative team or performing. And so I got to travel, and I've traveled a big percentage of this planet. And I fell in love with New Zealand the first time I moved here. People still looked you in the eye when they talked to you, strangers. You'd be in the supermarket and someone would hear my accent and they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" And the next thing you know, 20 minutes later, 5 lines, 4 lines, all the lines around you, everybody's in this conversation, and just nobody's saying, "Get on my way, I've got to hurry, get out of the groceries," your ice cream's melting in the bag. Nobody cared. And when people asked you, "How were you?" they
Mhm.
actually wanted to know. They wanted to wait, and reminded me of the way I grew up.
Mhm.
And you don't trust it for the first few days
Yeah.
because you're like, "Oh, they're just being friendly."
Yeah.
But by the time my trip was over, I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
And so I went back and went back to the States, and I thought, yeah, I kind of want to live that version of life again.
Mhm.
And so I started the process and got really lucky. We applied, and I got approved for residency, and
Nice.
it just kind of felt like the Kiwi gods were saying, "Come on." And
Come
so
on
moved here
over.
4 years ago.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. And I was reading an article the other day. You guys are 100% COVID free at this point. You guys aren't
Pretty
getting.
much. I mean, they considered that. We had 2 months of lockdown, which,
Okay.
compared to the rest of the world is nothing. But they locked us down really hard at the beginning to
Mhm.
capture it. So we've been COVID free. I think we had 2 cases, and then they had, I don't know if it was 9, or I should know the number more, but it's very rare. But they're catching it when people come in. They're catching it at the border.
Mhm.
And so even if I were to leave right now, I have to do major quarantine when I get back for 2 weeks, and they're being very picky about letting people in, even residents and
Yeah.
citizens.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we're living pretty much closest to normal life that you can imagine compared to the rest of the world. You don't wear masks, you can hug everybody, you
Nice.
can go out. They try to ask that you don't do more than 100 people at a time, but
Mhm.
it's interesting to sit here, especially all my loved ones and friends around the world, to sit at this perspective and have a normal life and just watch what's going on and
Yeah.
count my blessings every day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's one of the positive things about living on an island. Essentially,
Yep. So
is you
that's what they were worried, though, because if it came into the island, it would just decimate it.
yeah.
There are less people here than in Los Angeles by
Yeah.
far. I think it's just around 4 million, a little bit over. And
Oh,
so they really wanted to make sure they got anything and everything under control before we had a risk of wiping out the population here.
yeah. Yeah. When you got such a small population like that, you got to take extreme precautions because one bad flu pandemic, or just like, I
Mhm.
mean, at that point we weren't. When COVID started coming around, we didn't know if it was like the flu, all that stuff. So like one bad pandemic could wipe out the population of an entire island like that. So
Yeah.
no, I get it. So you released some music for the holidays. You released a Chris. You were a part of a compilation album of holiday music.
Yes, it's Blue Iris is a production company. I was one of the owners, originators of it, and it's a multifaceted production company. We do music, film, TV. We just do creative content. And we originally were going to start bringing artists. Our goal, since we're so much about community and rebuilding community, which I think is what is lacking a lot in society today, is that we wanted to build community. And so we were going to bring artists from the States, from Europe, and pair them with Kiwi artists so that some of the world that didn't know the Kiwi artists, they got an opportunity to showcase that. And so we were going to be doing all these live events. And then because of COVID, it shut everything down.
Yeah.
So we were like, how's the best way we can get something out there? And also to bring some joy to the planet right now. And so we decided to do a Christmas album. And it was a compilation. It's all different genres. Tons of artists. We have artists from the States, from the UK, from New Zealand. We have Mike Crumpus, who was with Smash Mouth, and a few others. But he's an amazing producer. And then I got to bring in Kelly Moneymaker, who's an amazing songwriter and producer.
Actually, we have her on the podcast after you. So
yeah, well, good for you. She'll be a great interview.
Awesome.
But it was just to bring them in and then work with our mixer in LA, Frank Rosato with Woodcliff Studios, who's just the best. He's worked with some of the best in the business. But were really fortunate to have some really established musicians and music veterans come in so that we could also bring in some up and comers. And so we've got new people here on the album, some Kiwi artists, other artists around. And it was a really joyful experience. I think everyone was so happy to be creating something positive that we laughed all the time. And it just was literally one of the easiest projects I've ever been involved with in my life. And I'm really fortunate.
Awesome. So you're one of the founding members of Blue Iris?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How long has that kind of been around and moving?
Well, we were doing a company, but we actually just decided to open it as the production company this year. So it's been since about the end of July. Okay. The company itself has been around for about 3.5 years, but we actually, because of what happened with COVID, we decided to really just focus on that. And so we restructured the company and opened it this year.
Awesome. And then as far as like you personally and your music, what's kind of the plan moving forward for 2021? Where are you kind of at creatively right now?
Creatively, I'm writing a lot of new stuff. We will do a follow-up Christmas album because we have other artists now that we want to bring in who want to be part of this. The big thing with the album, which we also wanted to give back, is that we paired with Futures Without Violence, which is a charity that's been around for 30 years. And it's they've in terms of Futures, I'm trying to think I'm sorry, I've lost my little train of thought here, but Futures is, they have provided like groundbreaking programs and policies and campaigns that empower individuals like myself or organizations working to end violence against women and children. And so 5% of the proceeds of the albums goes to that. And we are really excited because that was the other reason, along with bringing joy, what could we do to help change society? And domestic abuse has risen dramatically because of COVID. So we started that with the Christmas album. So we'll do a second follow-up. And then I'm also working on to release an album possibly this year. That'll be more within the swing and the old crooning style, very Andy Williams, Bing Crosby, which is what my songs are. So yeah.
When I listened to your song on the compilation album, that was the first thing that popped into my head. It sounded very jazz swingish, like there was a little bit of a jazz element in swing music and the crooner effect. You know, so I definitely picked up on that right away. So
good.
So like when you sit down, since you're heavy in the writing phase right now, what's kind of your style when you write? Are you very strategic with your writing? Like do you say, okay, I only have from 8 to 10 tonight to write, or are you just very free flowing? When something hits, it hits? Like, what's kind of your style?
That's interesting. You know what? I think it's when I feel like I'm a little dry for the
Mm-hmm.
moment, that I'm not, things aren't coming, then I put myself on a schedule and I just sit down at the piano, or I sit down. Sometimes the lyrics come first. A lot of times it's a melody
Mm-hmm.
that pops first, and then it's going with the style of the music of what the message of the song I want to do. But so I try to make myself as a writer write every day. I think it was Diane Warren who said, you write 100 songs and you might be lucky if one is good.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, just keep writing and get that muscle exercised. And so when things aren't just coming to me easily, I just sit down and I go through melodies and I record them, or I write lyrics and I just throw ideas. Most of the time with me, thank goodness, the muses kind of come in when I'm not expecting it.
Yeah.
So I get all these ideas when I'm driving, when I'm sitting somewhere. And so I always keep my phone. I used to keep a recorder, but I keep a phone and a pad. I keep a pen and pad by my bed at night, because I'm actually one of those old style that
Yeah.
I like to write. It
Yeah.
helps me remember it better.
Yep. Yep.
And then I type it in. So yeah.
Well, because it's like I completely get that part. Like I talk to a lot of musicians, and they're still very much a pen and pad, pen to paper type situation is what they do. Um. Oh, did I lose you? Hold on a minute.
There you are. You came
Okay.
back. There
I
you
was
are.
sitting
Sorry
here, I was
about
like,
that.
you were like blinking for a really long time, and I'm sitting here speaking, and I'm like, wait, I think I lost him. No, this can't be right. Um,
Sorry
but
about that. That's one the other thing about being on a small island. The internet is not predictable here.
oh, it's all good. No, I was gonna say, what I was saying was I talk to a lot of musicians that are still very much pen to paper. It like they'll still have their phones to kind of um take audio notes or whatever. Oh, he's down. Okay, I think you're back.
All right.
All right.
You're back. There you go. So you were talking to musicians who are pen to paper.
Yeah, but they still
And
keep their phone and do audio notes and what have you. So, that's not very uncommon. Um
okay.
all
What I
right.
was saying was, it makes it very tangible, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of connects to my body when I keep it physical.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Cool. I sorry, the internet thing threw me off a little bit, but we'll get through it. We'll ride through it. So you're working on your own personal album. You're getting ready for the follow up of the Christmas album. Um, what's kind of key? Well, obvious, or since COVID's not really affecting New Zealand right now, are you guys able to get out and do live shows? Is that a thing that's
Yeah.
happening? Yeah.
Yes. They, for a while, even when after the first, 2 months, 8 weeks, or 10 weeks lockdown, they limited it some. But so come October, November, all of a sudden, all the people who were afraid we might go backwards, which they didn't want. So everybody's got like double, triple the gigs. And so people are doing like 9 and 10 gigs a week, some of the musicians I know. And so it's a bit crazy, but it's good. So yeah, there's a lot of gigs happening right now. And I think internally in the country, it's great. And that's why for us, we're trying to think of ways to incorporate the international community of music, because we know so many artists. And so that's why we're trying to come up, like I'm producing a couple of other albums for other artists and writing some songs, because we're trying to figure out how to bring work. I know within the arts, all my friends who are musicians, who are actors, who are anybody with the entertainment, are hurting really bad. So much is shut down. And so we're trying to come up with ways that we can hire people, spread it around a little bit.
Yeah.
And then also try to help distribute projects for other friends that are in the industry that have new things. We have some really well-known musicians who are writing children's books right now because they don't know what else to do and they have kids. So we're like, hey, let's get it here. Let's get it out there to the world.
Yeah.
So,
gotcha. Yeah. How often do you go out and play or do shows?
Right now, the last one I did was December 8th, I think. And then we took a little break. We were mad getting that album. We literally had to get that album and 13 accompanying videos, some were lyric videos, done in 8 weeks when we found out the opportunity. So I did not sleep at
I
all.
got you.
And so I've been taking a little break. So I'm just now coming back. So I probably will start gigging probably in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, like I mean, I know the struggle of having to hit deadlines.
Yep.
That's not lost on me at all.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sure. I'm sure.
so as far as oh, sorry. For some reason, I just looked up and you were looking at me. I was like, "Oh no, did it freeze again?"
Okay.
Um, so when you are in like kind of full swing, how often do you get out and play?
It depends. To be honest with you, it depends on the project I'm doing. Sometimes it's great to do weekly, like
Hmm.
once or twice weekly. When I'm producing other projects, then I can't do it as much because my focus goes about the project. Like I like to get my music out there and get songs out
Hmm.
and get projects. But sometimes the projects, especially if it's something that we're filming or whatever, it really takes my demand. So when I get a new project out, I like to really get out there before
Yeah,
just to get the stuff going and then afterwards follow up with it. But then I always try to stack my projects to where,
yeah,
okay, I need to be out here with this. And now, okay, it's kind of had a little arc. And then I'll stack the other projects that aren't necessarily me singing, where I'll be playing, I'll be doing the keys or the organ, the B3 or whatever, or I'll just be producing or songwriting. So I try to do those. Like it's kind of like I try to schedule myself
yeah,
accordingly so that then I start singing again more to get my chops, keeping them up,
yeah.
to go out and start gigging again. So.
Nice. What's your opinion on vinyl? Is vinyl starting to make or making a big comeback in New Zealand, or is it?
Well, yes, it's starting here. You know, New Zealand is usually a few years behind
Mhm.
uh, the rest of the world, but I know vinyl's been huge there. But there are so many great music connoisseurs here, and believe it or not, there's Grammy award winning jazz musicians here. It's really surprising some of the musicians that are here. So vinyl is making a comeback here. Mostly right now, it's all digital
Okay.
because since it's smaller and it's a smaller country, a lot of people houses are smaller. It's usually people keep less stuff, which
Yeah.
is not a bad thing. And so digital is really big. Spotify is huge here, but digital downloads are the big way to go. But you get your connoisseurs here who love to collect vintage cars. Well, it's the same thing with music. There are the
Yeah.
connoisseurs that are really getting into vinyl.
Yeah.
So we really debated whether to do a vinyl press of the Christmas
Yeah.
CD, but because it's actually been having a really good run so far and it's been received really well, I think we are going to, especially for next season, do a vinyl press.
Nice. That's something that I've recently just started getting back into is vinyl.
Really?
Any uh, any independent show I go to, if I have to have the option to choose between vinyl or CD, 9 times out of 10, as long as I'm not like flat broke or something, I will go ahead and buy the vinyl. Just because it's just a piece of artwork. Even like I mean, I have a way to listen to it, but it's a piece of art, and I just kind of want it in my collection. So
Yeah, but I'm the same way. And I'll be honest with you, I love the sound of vinyl. I
yeah,
love the noise on it. I love the way the needle sounds. I've always loved it. And that's what I grew up with. My
yeah,
parents, we hardly ever had the radio on.
yep,
Like we would listen to the radio in the car or wherever, but at home, my parents always had the record player on. And so everything was vinyl. And if we really loved something, they let us, like, our allowance or whatever money we got for birthdays, that's
yeah,
what we would do. We'd go buy albums. Like, so we had everything from Foreigner to Bay City Rollers to you name it, old school.
nice.
And but then again, even what my parents loved, big Elvis and Johnny Cash household. So
Gotcha, gotcha. And then as far as like your acting and stuff, do you still get out and act regularly, or is it just kind of something?
it's yes, again, that was put on hold in a big way. I
Mhm.
went in and did a little bit of stuff on Avatar with James Cameron here, and then a couple of years ago, Netflix was filming Roman Empire,
Okay.
and so I was hired to do a small little featured role on that. on the last season that's on Netflix right now. So they had, with COVID, there were a lot of films. I was supposed to be doing a film, and it was postponed because a lot of the team was coming from the States and Europe. So that right now it's starting to pick up here. Everyone wants to come here, but the problem is getting everyone here from overseas. And so that's the big thing so
I
it's picking up. So yeah.
I've been doing some reading that there are a lot of industries that are at least temporarily coming over to New Zealand and Australia, just because once you get through that 2-week quarantine, it's pretty much business as usual.
Yep, it is business as usual. And so that's what everybody's setting up. So you had the Avatar crew, you have a couple BBC crews. There's a couple of films now here in Welly, because I'm up in Welly right now, and the Wellington. But there's some films that are starting, some big budget Hollywood films that are starting. But it's busy. It's just getting everyone here.
Yeah.
And so everyone is here. You're usually here, I think, for about 6 to 8 months. And then they take everybody out. So it's just getting the process to get everyone here.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a few friends that live out in LA that do film work, and I'm kind of surprised that they haven't ended up over in New Zealand yet.
A lot of people are trying. I'm not kidding. I know so many people that are trying, but the immigration is trying to keep it at bay so that they don't bring in too much COVID. And so it's really tough. You'd be surprised. It's tougher than what you think.
Yeah.
So it's just getting here. I am working on I'm in pre-production on a few projects. There's a couple of films, but then also working, building possibly another studio in New Zealand, down on the South Island.
Nice.
And so that's one of the things I can't talk too much about. But so working with them with all the newest technology.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. So sounds like everything's going really well in New Zealand. You know, it's been a while since I've had somebody from New Zealand on the podcast. Like early on during the pandemic, while everybody was like in lockdown, didn't have much else to do, it seemed like once a week we had like 2 or 3 people from Auckland or Wellington, whatever. And then as you guys started to open back up and went back to life as normal, it was just kind of like, oh hey, yeah, we'll try and get it scheduled, but 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday isn't quite easy for everyone.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting here. So you have a group of people that's what they do. But in New Zealand, because the gigs and the work wasn't always that much plenty, it didn't have a lot of opportunities, that a lot of people work other jobs and then they do music on the side. So a lot of pro musicians they teach at the music schools or the universities here. But right now, once everything opened up, it was like a backlog, and I think that's why.
Gotcha.
But I'll hook you up if you want. You just let me know. I'll get some really killer musicians for you on here.
Awesome. Yeah. We will definitely remain in contact about that one.
Yeah, definitely.
And then outside of music, outside of film, outside of the entertainment business, what's kind of your thing? What's your hobby?
Well, I have a lot. I love horseback riding, being a Kentucky, a Louisville boy, even though it's Southern Indiana. I still work with rescues. Having grown up on a farm, I'm big into animal rescue. When I was in the States, I worked with a lot of different rescue groups. And so I would, catch all the feral cats and get them spayed and neutered and then trap and put them back. But I work with a lot of animal rescues here. And the other thing is my biggest thing is charities. And if I can, my older sister, who passed away a couple of years ago, surprisingly and suddenly, she was mentally handicapped. So I've been very big into Special Olympics in my life. I've always worked and volunteered with them and gotten celebrities involved. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to do. It's my way of giving back. All my greatest mentors with music and the arts, I would always say, how can I pay you back? And they'd say, pay it forward. And I believe that both artistically and as a community member, how can I give it back? And so those are my hobbies. It's funny you brought up comic books. I collect comic books. I'm a big comic book fan. So right now I'm just excited because we can actually create, and there's a demand for it right now. So I'm creating a lot right now, which makes me a very happy man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. 2 things I want to touch on before we wrap this up. First, there's been a feral cat living in my back. I live in front of a dried out riverbed, and I've been trying to go get this feral cat to go take it to a non-kill shelter because I know if I call the city, well, I'm
Yeah.
not 100% sure what's going to happen to the cat. But because she lives down in a dry riverbed, she won't come up. And I'm not going to go running down into a dry riverbed because I have cerebral palsy. So it's, yeah, that's not going to quite work going down into a dry riverbed. And B, I don't know what's down there. So it's one of those things.
You know what? Let me make some calls. I'll actually make some calls for you to find out who's close enough or they're in Waco that will actually set it up for you, because there are groups all over. And right now, since a lot of people can't go out, as long as they can get the volunteers, they're actually really good because they don't have to worry about other people, getting in the way or causing a problem. But let me do some research and see
Okay.
what we can do to find people to find you, because I love you for that. I think it's great.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. Like she'll come out. I'll see her like, I'm assuming it's a her, but I'm not 100% sure. I see her about once every other week, like just when I walk out, going out to my car or whatever, I'll just look down and I'll see her. But, it's just one of those things where it's like, I just feel bad because she's just always down there. And it's like, yo, are you like, do you belong to somebody or do it's just one of those things.
Is she stuck down there, or is that just where she's living?
That's just where I always see her is down in the riverbed.
Yeah, she
But
probably feels safe. Like,
yeah,
to be honest with you, she might have belonged to someone, and that's where she feels safe and protected because she's by herself.
yeah,
Usually, when you see cats that are by themselves, they've been either attacked or they're very afraid. And so,
mm,
cats that have gotten out or run away, especially with 4th of July,
yeah.
the fireworks are
Oh, yeah.
terrible for animals. And so, that's what happens. So, it's just having somebody with the right trap down there and getting the right food. Like, I always tell people to do salmon, but
Yeah.
the fresh salmon. But yeah, and it's just getting her trapped and then getting her checked out. So,
Gotcha. So, being that you are from southern Indiana, the Midwest, so to speak, and now that you
yeah.
live in New Zealand, what's one thing you miss about living in the Midwest that you can't get in New Zealand?
Um, I miss cornhole. They don't have it here. I could
Okay.
build it, but the my family loves that. It was something that they love, and so but
You don't watch the cornhole championships on
no, I
ESPN?
haven't. I've got to, but it sounds silly. But I mean, I grew up with horseshoes and then cornhole and everything like that. But um, I can get. My friend is one of my dearest friends, Ann Stickler is a company member with Brown Foreman, so I can still get my Jack Daniels. That I'm a whiskey boy. But to be honest with you, the biggest thing I miss is my loved ones, my tribe. Whether it's my family or friends, I miss my tribe. That's the one thing about when you move away. And so it's great that we have Zoom and Skype and
Yeah.
all these other things, but I miss just being around and laughing and creating life.
Gotcha. Yep. I completely get it. I'm only 1,000 miles away from my family, and so I can only imagine what being on the other side of the world feels like.
Yeah,
So,
my nieces and nephews love to crawl on top of me, so it's you can't replace that. So
absolutely. So, where can everybody find you online if they want to
well,
follow
you
what you're
can
doing? And
Kehan Miller, KehanMiller.com. I'm at Kehan Miller on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Blue Iris, which Iris is Latin for copper or air. It's AERIS. So blueiris.com is where the album is. And we're going to be uploading some upcoming projects in the next 2 weeks. But those are the places to find me right now the quickest. And thank you for that.
awesome. Once again, thank you so much for joining me and coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sticking through all the political craziness going on here in the States. And then yesterday, 6.5 inches of snow. Everybody was like, oh, we're gonna get snow. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, yeah. And then I found out that no one knows how to drive in
Yeah.
snow. Like,
Yeah.
I was getting ready to go out and I saw one guy trying to go up the driveway in my apartment complex and he's sitting there just spinning his tires. And I'm like, Yeah, I don't need to go out that bad. I'm gonna just stay right here. I ain't moving. So
It's like when it rained the first time when I moved to LA. The first time it rained, people did not know how. And one of the news stations, literally, the reporter had the microphone listen to the rain because it was like flooding. So they had the microphone down by the water. I'm like, you dummy, what are you doing?
yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
it's always a trip when you move somewhere new and they're not used to something that you it feels like you brought to them because it just seems to follow you, and it's just like, oh, okay, fine.
Well, we'll call you the snow miser. Isn't that the one from that the old
Oh yeah,
movie?
yeah.
Heat miser, cold miser, whatever it is.
Uh something oh, I can't think of the name of the movie now, but yes.
Like a
Snow
year
Miser.
without a Santa Claus or
Yeah,
Rudolph's
so
Shiny or whatever it is. One of those things. Those
yeah.
little claymation things.
Yep, that's it. But once again, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will catch you guys later.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cheers.
Cool. We are good.